NCTV45, The Train, anytime on your time. The Cedars is a great restaurant with outstanding Mediterranean food. The Cedars takeout menu is second to none, featuring pizza, stromboli, hoagies, their famous lamb on the rod, and so much more. So when you're hungry and you want that Newcastle taste, make it Cedars. Now with 2 locations in Newcastle, 827 Addis Street on the east side and 1101 Highland Avenue. Call Cedars East 724-658-9260 or Cedars North 724-652-7657. RNA Screen Printing Newcastle is the place to go for signs, shirts, hats, vinyl lettering, embroidery, magnets, vehicle lettering, banners, window decals, and they can put your design on many items. They have decals for vehicles and signs for all your advertising needs. Great selection of sizes and styles of regular or glitter t-shirts. RNA can iron on a logo while you wait and can do any school logo. RNA Screen Printing, 1217 Moravia Street, Newcastle, open Monday through Friday 9 to 4. Call 724-652-2241.
The Beanery Depot and Deli. Coffee, made-to-order subs, snacks, and more. Meatball sandwiches, fresh and hot. Pepperoni rolls, fish sandwiches, chicken, milkshakes. The Beanery Deli. When you're hungry for something special, and it won't cost you a lot of beans.
Welcome to the Cedars Sports Corner, everyone. I'm Alex, the Saint DeLaverson, and I'm going solo today. I want to thank Angelo Parada for having me on NCTV News 45. Greg, the mad scientist Bashir, is not here today, and neither is James the Value Man Dotson. So that means I'm running the show, and I get to do it a little bit differently today. Not too much differently, but I think we're going to have some fun today. So another week in the book, more frustrated fantasy owners, I should say.
Not me.
Not him. Not him. He's actually really happy because he gets to bust my chops on Ben Roethlisberger. And that's something that I've been hearing from all week. Our producer has been calling me, letting me have it. But what I've been trying to say is if I'm going to be wrong about something, I'm glad to be wrong about the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger. However, let's keep in mind that Ben is a better quarterback at home than he is on the road. I'm not saying don't start him. I'm saying don't expect to have the week that he's had in the past few weeks.
It's time to avoid him.
Now, I wouldn't say avoid. Depends who else you have on your roster. But the bottom line is, and I said this when we first started the show a few weeks ago, that when Ben is on, he's on. He's either going to throw 12 touchdowns in 2 games for you, or he's going to go 10 for 32, 118 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 3 picks. But with that being said, I think with Le'Veon Bell being back and Sammy Coates really developing into a deep threat, I think the Steelers and Ben, I think they're in pretty good shape moving forward. I don't know if you watched the Steeler game or not, Angelo, but one thing I noticed with Sammy Coates is when he's catching passes, it's like he has to coddle it in with his chest. He can't catch it with his hands. He drops it. He's looking at me like I'm nuts. Like, I'm telling you, I know what I see here.
I don't watch much football, but when I watch football, I watch winners.
Yeah. Well, I love watching winners, too. And the Steelers are winners. But I'll tell you what, though. Sammy Coates is a guy to really consider putting in your fantasy lineup as a flex. And, again, I don't know. Not that I don't know. I wouldn't expect him to have the same type of production he's had recently, especially with the game last week. 2 touchdowns. He's also very prone to dropping passes, and he had that problem in Auburn. So I wouldn't make him an immediate starting wide receiver on your squad just yet, but I think he's a pretty solid flex player moving forward. And just today, actually, the Steelers have picked up Carlos Williams. And I don't know if that means they're just kind of preparing for D'Angelo Williams to retire after the season. I hope not, because I really, really like D'Angelo Williams. But, you know, they must know something, or they must be thinking something that no one else is talking about. But I'll tell you what, though. I'm going to stray away from football just for a little bit. And I want to talk about the devastating news of Sidney Crosby getting another concussion. And when he had the concussion in 2010, that was in the Winter Classic, I believe, and then it carried over until the following season. He missed the rest of the season since the Classic, and I think till the middle of the next season. And Angelo, you have to wonder, you know, him being 28, 29, how many more of these headshots, or concussions I should say, is it going to be till he thinks of, you know, maybe calling it a career? Now, of course, athletes get concussions all the time, but Crosby's, you know, was significant.
With the new concussion-type laws and rules, everything like that, they don't let them go through so many. They usually say, that's it, it's time to break it off.
Yeah, I mean...
I got a better question for you. Since I want to know if you feel the Lake Erie karma rising up.
Lake Erie karma.
Yeah, you know, I am not a Cleveland kind of guy. But let's analyze this. The Cavs win the title. They beat Boston. They go on to play Toronto.
Correct.
Indians just beat the Red Sox. They're going on to play Toronto. Hate to mention that, but...
well, you know, it took the city of Cleveland long enough to get to this point. So, you know, if that happens...
So they can only play two teams.
Yeah.
Boston and Toronto.
Yeah, it's the only way to a championship. But with all seriousness, though, I'm happy. I'm happy for city of Cleveland. Never thought I'd say that, but, you know, it's...
They have a song for the Browns.
Uh-huh.
Billy Joel, don't go changing to try and please me.
Don't go changing to try and please me. Well, hey, they tried to change uniforms last year, and it was like from one shade of orange to a slightly darker shade of orange, so I don't think the Browns are going to change much, especially with their talent level. Man, just what a poor organization. I don't like really having any players on the Browns on my fantasy team. I mean, there was talks of having Josh Gordon.
Because they don't win.
Well, they don't win. It's an organization that just has like a losing culture, and you know, to me, it was like friendly competition. Now I feel bad for them. Like I really do. It's like I'm pitying them. Isaiah Crowell, a decent fantasy back. He's pretty actually productive. Like I was saying a little bit ago, Josh Gordon, a lot of people were expecting, he's going to come back, he's going to do great, and then, we know how that story goes. Honestly, Gary Barnidge is okay, but I kind of have this rule of not having Cleveland players on my team, and I learned that the hard way in 2010 in my fantasy football championship. I don't know what possessed me to start the Cleveland Browns defense, and I got lit up, and they gave up like 45 points, and it equated to like negative 15 points for the NFL.com app. So I learned that the hard way. But overall, I'm happy for the city of Cleveland. Pittsburgh, our city has had 4 Stanley Cups, 6 Super Bowls. If you want to count the 9 Pitt Panther championships, you can. That's when I think dinosaurs were still walking the earth.
Don't say any swear words here.
Okay.
I'm a Notre Dame fan.
Okay. All right. But, oh, yeah, he is a Notre Dame fan. And how do you feel about your Fighting Irish?
Well, this week we take on the Stanford Cardinal.
The Stanford
We
Cardinals.
proved we can't win at home. We can't win on the road. We'd like a neutral site.
Right. Well, you know, yeah. Well, you know what? You have to wonder, is Brian Kelly on the hot seat?
Well, think about this. He had an incident of which a lot of times you have no control. You talk to a college coach, and I did last week, and he said, and he was retired, he said, the thing I love most is practice. That's when you have the most control. He says, because on Saturday, once the game starts, you have no control.
Right.
You're susceptible to bad calls. You got 18 to 22-year-old kids away from home for the first time, and they're just experiencing everything. Since I had to give up my Notre Dame clothes for the season due to all the losses, this week a real barn burner in western Pennsylvania. The Duquesne Dukes take on the Robert Morris Colonials. And if you recall, the Dukes were in the Division I AA playoffs last year.
That's right. That's right.
That'll be a little interesting. Now, elsewhere, the Pitt Panthers are, nobody's watching, but they're kind of moving up, just inching their way through the season. And Pitt's taking on Virginia, and they're sporting a 4-2 record. Now, not great, but pretty doggone good.
That's for Pitt. That's pretty respectable, especially after going through four different coaches since 2010. I really like Pat Narduzzi. I love those throwback uniforms they wore against Georgia Tech for homecoming. I think Narduzzi's the coach if he stays.
And in closing, because we're going to have to take a break, they have at home number 17 for Virginia Tech and Miami and Clemson all back to back to back. And then they have Duke and Syracuse. So they could eke out 3 more wins and have a 7-2 record and play those top 20 teams. And, you come away with 1 or 2 wins, you're going to get a respectable bowl. Now, we're going to have to take this break. We're going to be right back after we hear from these great sponsors.
Come to Big Polly's Sports Bar in Newcastle.
The place is spacious with all the seating you'll need, with 2 bars and a huge menu that features wings, pizza, sandwiches, burgers, pasta, and fries.
Big Polly's
Is just right to watch the game. You'll love the sports memorabilia throughout the bar. There's plenty of parking too.
Big Polly's Sports Bar
In Newcastle at 207 East Long Avenue. Call 724-658-8800. That's 658-8800. Gentlemen, if you want to look your best with high-quality clothing, then I recommend Main Street Clothiers and Custom Tailors in downtown Newcastle. Mike Caggiano is the owner, and he and his staff have been in the business for decades, and they will always give you the right recommendations. They also carry Rondinelli tuxedos. That's Main Street Clothiers and Custom Tailors, 210 East Washington Street, downtown Newcastle. Call 724-652-3851.
Welcome back to the Cedars Sports Corner on NCTV45. I'm Alex DeLaverzin, representing 3SN Fantasy. Like I said, Greg the Mad Scientist and James the Value Man are not here. And we talked in the first session a little bit of everything, but this is a fantasy football show, so we're going to get into some fantasy football talk. We talked a little bit about Big Ben in the first segment, but I have an interesting little tidbit. I honestly think when you're starting your fantasy quarterback, the way this year has been going, I might actually start any quarterback that's playing the Oakland Raiders. They have allowed the 4th highest passer rating and 3rd most fantasy points, and also the 2nd most yards per attempt to opposing quarterbacks this year. And Alex Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs, are playing Oakland. So Alex Smith is actually, I think, a pretty decent sleeper pick if you're thin at quarterback or your quarterback's on a bye. I think he's a solid pickup. And, of course, Alex Smith is known as more of a game manager instead of as someone who airs it out and racks up a lot of points. But like I said, this matchup against Oakland is almost too good to be true. So I would definitely think of starting Alex Smith. And also he had 2 passing touchdowns in both meetings with the Raiders last year. And also he averaged 42 rushing yards. So he'll be ready to play against Oakland. Tom Brady, you're obviously going to start him if you have him. But what a treat it was seeing him return to action last week. He was not rusty at all, throwing for 406 yards and 3 touchdowns. He produced his 8th 400-yard passing game last week against Cleveland. And they're playing another Ohio team this week in the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Bengals are actually allowing the 11th most yards per attempt and 17 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this year. So everything's in place for Brady to have another big game this week. So if you have Brady and another top-tier quarterback, I would definitely consider starting Brady, especially because of that matchup with Cincinnati. We talked about, when I say we, myself and the 3SN fantasy team, about Martellus Bennett possibly becoming the next Aaron Hernandez for the Patriots. Not so much as the killer Aaron Hernandez, but he really had a great week, and he actually only ran 6 fewer routes than Gronkowski last week. And, Cincy is kind of stingy against tight ends, I'll admit that, but they also have not faced a tight end tandem such as Gronkowski and Martellus Bennett. Gronkowski is still the top tight end there, of course, but Martellus Bennett, we were not surprised. The 3SN team was not surprised of how he did last week, and we continue to think that he's going to do well moving forward. Julian Edelman, I think, is also going to have another big week because the Bengals' defense has actually given up the 12th most points to wide receivers this year. And he's not someone I would expect to lead your starting wide receiver position and rack up a lot of points, but I think he's a solid wide receiver number 2 or maybe even a flex in standard leagues, and especially in leagues that are points per reception. So that's going to be a definite boost for him. I have with me what is called Dotson's waiver wire team. And Dotson is our waiver wire guy. He does excellent research, and he has some interesting plays this week. Dotson is saying if you need a quarterback, go after Marcus Mariota. He's owned in 65% of leagues, and he's facing the Cleveland Browns defense. Now, the Browns defense, they're just the Browns in general, like I said in the first segment, they're just so bad. It's garbage, and their defense has given up the 5th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. Mariota threw 4 touchdowns last week, so you're thin at quarterback or your quarterback's on bye or hurt or whatever, consider Marcus Mariota. And I can never pronounce this guy's name right, even after I know how it's pronounced, but AJ, whatever. Imagine... I don't know if you know what his name is, Angelo, or not. I know what his name is. I just can't pronounce it. It just doesn't come off my tongue right. AJ, a J-A, or a J... say that 5 times fast. Yeah, I know. But he's going up against our Pittsburgh Steelers this week. One thing to know about a J-A
Wait, don't make my lunch. Tell him don't take Ben.
Hey, don't take Ben. There, I said don't take Ben this week. If Ben has a great week this week, I will literally go on the air and say start Ben Roethlisberger every week, even if he's hurt. I will do that. But with all seriousness, though, the JA is owned in 53% of leagues, and he's had a touchdown each week. So, look at trends. We always talk about trends. I think the trend's going to continue with him. Dotson also likes James White from New England going up against Cincinnati. An interesting stat he discovered is that James White is actually outsnapping LeGarrette Blount. Think about that. I don't think most people know that. And he's owned in 42% of leagues, so he's probably going to be available if you need a running back. He also has, for wide receiver, Cole Beasley from Dallas going up against the Green Bay Packers. He's owned in 60% of leagues, and his points the last 5 weeks is 6, 7, 7, 6, and 11. So when we come back, we'll wrap this up. We'll talk about the rest of Dotson's waiver wire team and maybe go over some of the questions we've got this year on our Twitter feed.
If you want to score big, then get over to Shenango Auto Mall. George Fiacco, General Sales Manager, and his experienced staff will be glad to talk to you about all the amazing used car deals from their huge inventory. Lifetime powertrain warranties, extended warranties, and guaranteed credit approval. They have a body shop and full detail shop. It's not your normal used car lot. They also buy cars, trucks, and SUVs. Shenango Auto Mall is located at 2515 Elwood Road in Shenango Township. Call 724-698-7304.
The Branding Iron Bar and Grill, a great place to gather.
Some examples from the menu: 45-cent jumbo wings with 30 different kinds of sauce, meatball sub and fries, $5.50, hot cheese balls and burgers, and delicious large sandwiches. Stop in during happy hour, 4:30 to 7:30. You can dine in or take out. The Branding Iron Bar and Grill is located at 2221 Ben Franklin Highway, Edinburgh. Call 724-658-1210.
All right, I am back on the Cedars Sports Corner. Last segment, we were talking about Dotson's waiver wire team for this week, and he had Cole Beasley, and he had an interesting stat. The last 5 weeks, he's put up a pretty consistent stat line: 6 points, 7 points, 7 points, 6 points, and 11 points. So we always talk about what have you done for me lately and consistency. Cole Beasley, being only owned in 60% of leagues, going up against the Packers, could be a solid flex spot if you need one. So keep him in mind. Dotson also likes Eddie Royal from Chicago. He's owned in 60% of leagues, and he's facing the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's actually is due for a big week. I have a thing with players that are known solid fantasy producers. If you're going to take a risk on someone, I actually kind of like taking a risk on someone that's been I don't want to say slumping so much, but you can almost they're eventually going to break out for a big game. So I'm not saying definitely have Eddie Royal in your starting lineup, but if you're thin, you're looking at your waiver wire positions, no one really worth picking up. You see Eddie Royal there, you're going to have to pick up a free agent that's either going to be boom or bust. Go with Eddie Royal. He also has Chris Hogan, wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Hogan is owned in 60% of leagues, and he's facing the Cincinnati Bengals defense. Last week, 4 receptions and 114 receiving yards. I just like him because his last name's Hogan, Angela. It was my corny joke for the day, Hulk, I had to throw a corny one in there. I was never really good at being funny, but, if he's available, and no other free agents sticking out, go with Chris Hogan. Here's an interesting one Dotson has. Jesse James, tight end from Pittsburgh.
That Hogan could be a real hero.
Oh, yeah, Hogan's Heroes, that's right. I'm wondering, I bet no one in the New England area has made that joke yet. No, I don't think anyone has. But as far as Jesse James from Pittsburgh goes, he's actually owned in 70% of leagues. And, again, you're going to hear this. Big Ben is not as good on the road as he is at home. So that is something to kind of consider, But Jesse James, you're going to really have to hope he's in that red zone because other than his touchdowns, not much else that really sticks out with him. But Dotson likes him, and, if you need a tight end on the waiver wire, look at him just because of his red zone production. Dotson and kickers, he has such an interesting relationship with them. He has this love-hate thing. He won't even play a kicker.
Does he take them out for dinner?
Well, you never know. But he is someone, he won't even play a kicker or draft a kicker, but he knows all these in-depth stats with them. And I think it's because he's a math teacher, so I think his brain is like a little calculator, so he can pick up which kicker, the probability of the kicks they're gonna make, what the wind speed is or whatever. But he says Caleb Sturgis for the Philadelphia Eagles owned in 85% of leagues, playing the Washington Redskins. And this is what I mean. Dotson, brilliant mind. He pulled out a stat, and his points per week. First week, 8 points, then 13, then 10, then 14. So pretty decent fantasy numbers for a kicker. So, your kicker's on bye, or you don't even use one, go with Caleb Sturgis. He also has the Baltimore Ravens defense, and not much really to go in depth there. The Giants offense has been terrible. And, I don't really blame Odell Beckham for being frustrated. Oh, he's immature, don't get me wrong. But, man, what a frustrating time it is to be, a New York Giant fan. But, it is what it is. So, those are some decent waiver wire pickups to look at for this week. Let's go over some of the questions we get on our Twitter feed. And I'll tell you what, Angelo, some of these people have the craziest names. It's the craziest names.
I butcher them on Newswatch. So.
Yeah. And, I actually think I'm not going to have enough time to go over all these questions.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It really does. So how about this? We're going to leave you with a little cliffhanger. If you want to see some of the questions we got on our Twitter feed, check out our Twitter feed. You can reach us on Twitter at the FF Toolkit. Pretty basic, pretty easy to find. Honestly, I think it's probably a good thing I'm not talking about some of these questions we got because some of these names are actually really offensive. So it worked out. Wow. I don't know where these people come up with these names at. I can't. Wow. I'm actually really glad we're running out of time here because I wouldn't have known what to say. I'd have to do impromptu with some G-rated versions of these names, and I don't think that's even possible.
Well, we better say time to see these sponsors.
Yes, well, just like our producer said, it's time for these sponsors. Thank you for turning in this week, guys.
See you next week.
See you next week.
This program furnished by Sporting Goods, 23 East Washington Street, Newcastle. Call 724-658-2535. Funding for this program provided by Washington Center Physical Therapy, Norm A. Gabriel, MSPT, ATC owner.